Obrigada, Alexandre. Obrigada a vocês pela presença. É um grande prazer poder estar aqui com vocês na Bienal. E eu sempre acho que é muito agradável a gente conhecer de perto um escritor e conhecer como é que ele construiu a obra dele, como é que ele constrói os livros dele. Eu vou começar apresentando o Conn. Não sei se todos vocês o conhecem o que ele já escreveu. E vou fazer uma primeira pergunta, pedir para que ele fale um pouco do livro, desse livro aqui, o Livro Perigoso para Garotos, que agora sai, inclusive, em versão de livro de bolso, né? Ele vai nos falar das diferenças do anterior, que é esse aqui, para essa nova versão. E depois eu vou abrir para a plateia poder perguntar. Então, quem quiser perguntar, é só levantar a mão, se identificar e fazer a pergunta. Bom, o Conn nasceu em Londres, formou-se em inglês pela London University, trabalhou como professor por 7 anos, até a publicação do livro O Imperador. O grande sucesso levou o autor a escrever um segundo livro e depois um terceiro, sem falar que passou a viver exclusivamente de literatura. Ele não ensina mais na escola. O Imperador, para quem não conhece, com seus 3 volumes, é uma reconstituição da vida do imperador Júlio César, baseada em relatos comprovados por descobertas arqueológicas. Nos 3 volumes, os leitores são transportados para perto de um dos personagens mais importantes da história. Outra série do Conn é O Conquistador, também uma série de romances históricos, com 3 volumes também. Uma recriação da saga do imperador mongol Gengis Khan e de seus descendentes. Em outra linha completamente diferente é o livro Perigoso para Garotos, uma espécie de manual de escoteiro mirim, uma espécie de almanaque, de enciclopédia, com jogos, explicando pilha, bola de gude, pescarias, enfim, todas as curiosidades que estão nas cabeças dos garotos. Foi escrito pelo Conn, em parceria com o irmão dele, o Hal. Então, Conn, é um grande prazer ter você aqui, seja bem-vindo à Bienal. Eu gostaria que você começasse nos contando um pouco de como surgiu a ideia de fazer um livro perigoso para garotos nesse formato de almanaque, com explicações, pequenas explicações. Como é que você escolheu os verbetes, né, os desenhinhos para cada coisa? Esse formato almanaque mesmo. E o Conn estava me dizendo que o livro fez tanto sucesso, vendeu quase 2 milhões de exemplares na Inglaterra, que ele mesmo se surpreendeu com esse sucesso, né? Então, queria que você nos contasse um pouco do bastidor, da história mesmo do livro, de onde surgiu a ideia e, enfim, e como é que foi trabalhar em parceria a 4 mãos com seu irmão.
Thank you. This book started because I had a son. I had a son back in the year 2000, and I should say, obviously, there have been books like this before. My grandfather was born in 1850. He had my father in 1923 when he was 73. So we had books in the house with old-fashioned titles, things like 101 Chemical Amusements for Boys. They used to be very common, but for whatever reason, when my son was born and I started looking around for similar books, there were very few things on the market which I wanted, wanted him to read. It was therefore a personal thing. I had in those days, I published a book, I wrote a book, and then 18 months later it was published. So I had a year and a half between the books coming out. And I wanted to use 6 months of that. So I went to a publisher. I went to my agent first of all, and I said, do you think this is a good idea? And she thought it was. And then we went to Bloomsbury in London, who publish Harry Potter. It was originally offered to my publishers, HarperCollins, and they didn't think it was a good idea, so they said no. So we took it to Bloomsbury, and they said yes. And I sent them a few chapters. We started to write it. I had to buy a shed with my brother. And I remember as I bought the shed, as I pulled up an old shed, there was a snake in the grass, and in England, if there's a snake, you reach down and pick it up. I don't think you do that in Brazil, but in England, you will probably live. So I reached down and picked it up, and it wrapped around my wrist, and then squirted me with the most appalling filth I have ever experienced. Because that was its defense mechanism. A grass snake in England squirts you with liquid feces and then plays dead. So the snake in my hand suddenly... So right from the beginning, I started to enjoy it. I put a shed in my garden. I had a little table in there, and then for 6 months with my brother, he would arrive every day, and we would play. Sometimes silly things, marbles, conkers. We'd make catapults, a bow and arrow, and go out into the local park and shoot the bow and arrow. A go-kart we made. The first time I made it exactly the same as the design when I was a boy. And unfortunately, I am much heavier than when I was a boy. So the first time we took it down a hill, the back wheels collapsed and shattered. So we had to get new back wheels, and I had to try it with my son, who did much better than I did. So that was really the idea of it at the time. I was not trying to write a book that would sell very well. I was not trying to write a book for anyone else. I wasn't trying to, not even to exclude girls. We called it the dangerous book for boys because we were boys. We were trying to celebrate all of the things that we had done as boys and a few things we cared about as adults. And so far, it seems to have worked out fairly well. We wanted it to be detailed, and we wanted everything in it to work, because I have read things where the author obviously hasn't made the item. So that was rule number one. If we couldn't make it, it couldn't go in. Do you know what a telegraph machine is? When it goes dee-dee-dee, da-da-da. I couldn't make that. I couldn't make that work. It was impossible. It's very difficult to make that thing work, so that I couldn't put that in. Everything else, however, I know it works because we did it. Then, when we'd finished it, I handed it in to Bloomsbury, and they said, it will either you cut 11 chapters, and then it will sell a large number, or if you refuse to cut these 11 chapters, we will price it at such a high rate that it will not sell. In other words, you know, do what we say or it's finished. They didn't like the bow and arrow chapter because a bow and arrow is dangerous. They didn't like the fact that I had put the treehouse was a job for dads. They didn't like the shooting the rabbit chapter because, you know, kids with guns could be difficult. And there were a few other things as well. So I wasn't sure what to do with the book. And I spoke to my brother and I said, look, here's the choice. We either cut 11 chapters and then they say it'll sell very well, or we stick to our guns and sell 5 copies to our mums and dads and, you know, and so on. And he said that he didn't care how many copies we sold, he just wanted the book to be the one that we had written, the one that we cared about. So I said, okay, now Bloomsbury are not going to go for this, and I was lost. So I had met Bernard Cornwell. Do you know the author Bernard Cornwell, who wrote the Sharp books? Okay. I met him and I liked him, and he was vastly more experienced than me. So I wrote him an email and said, here's the situation, you know, I don't know what to do. And he said that I should give it to a motorcycle courier and drive it across London to the HarperCollins publishers, the ones who had turned it down once, but now it was written so they could see it instead of just an idea, and see if they would accept it. And they looked at it and they accepted it, and it was about a month to go before Father's Day, and they wanted to get it out before Father's Day, so they had no time to edit it, which means that the book that came out almost uniquely in the last century is about the only book you will ever read that has not been edited at all. So it is exactly the book that my brother and I wanted to write, and I hope you, if you read it, I hope you enjoy it.